Hello, aspirants. Welcome to PW OnlyIAS. I'm here preaching with a daily analysis of the Hindu from 3rd of December 2024. Let's begin with today's analysis. So this is the Telegram account where you can basically find this particular PDF along with the other material that is required for your preparation. These are the topics that we have taken. Person with disabilities, space traffic. It is basically related to the debris that we have in space and the problems related to that. Then have one nation, one subscription, because though we have covered it in brief, over here we're going to again analyze it because this has been in the newspaper. Then we have the PMI, then the windfall tax, and the outcome of the 𝐑𝐄𝐂𝐼G conference that was held at Bhubaneswar. So what were the outcomes? What did the Honorable Prime Minister basically say at that conference becomes very important from the internal security perspective. So let's begin with today's analysis. Mains topics. Topic number 1, citizens with disabilities making their rights real. Now please understand, when we are talking about these particular editorial, this topic becomes very, very important from your General Studies paper 1 and General Studies paper 2. How? See, when we talking about Indian society, we have various people or composition of the society with respect to the population where the topic of vulnerable sections become very important. Among the vulnerable sections of the Indian society and social justice, we have the person with disabilities as one of the major constituents. So when we read this editorial, we'll be seeing that they have mentioned about the various aspects like what the status of the people with person with disabilities is presently is according to the 2011 census. Then it mentions about the problems that are prevalent with respect to the person with disabilities. Along with it, it mentions about the legal provisions that are there and what is the way forward. Now, after reading this, what we have done is I have summarized it in a very clear manner of what the topic is basically about. Let's see and understand that. If I talk about the persons with disabilities, let us see their status, because remember, when you're writing in your mains examination also, if you use certain statistics with the topic that is concerned, then definitely you get better marks, right? So when we talk about, according to the census 2011, because that is the latest comprehensive data that we have, the number of persons with disabilities in the country is around 2.68 crores, which is 2.21% of the total population of India. Now, as per the Rights of the Person with Disabilities Act 2016, which is the latest one, there are 21 types of disabilities which are included in under this act. Locomotor disability, these are the broad categories. Under these categories, there are various other disabilities that are there. Okay? Now, locomotor disability, visual impairment, hearing impairment, speech and language disability, intellectual disability, multiple disabilities, cerebral palsy, dwarfism, etc. So under these, we see large number of disabilities, and a total of 21 types of disabilities have been basically there. So earlier it was less, now the number has been increased. So when we talk about this, we see over here that this is a broad idea or aspect of the dimension of census 2011. Let's move ahead. Modes of disability rights. Now please understand, whenever you're talking about disability rights, it becomes very, very important from the perspective that we analyze their rights also. Now, what their rights are, what the issues are, please see. We can understand it from different models. Models basically provide you a framework through which we can analyze certain things, right? There are like a representation or symbolically, or from the aspect, a case of study. Now, if you want to study the disability rights, one we can study from the medical model, which basically focuses on individual level impairment that a particular person with disability is basically undergoing. That means focuses on individual impairment. That means a particular case is there, he's suffering or he's suffering from certain disability, and we are individually centric over there. That is from the perspective of the medical impairment. Second is social. Now, we need to understand that the people who are suffering from disabilities are also members of the society. And from the perspective of that, if we are studying, that is basically known as social mobility, because even if you are suffering from some disability, you are equally a stakeholder or member of the society. And that is why we have written the aspect of social model, where people with disabilities are a part of the society and with the same rights as everybody else. We don't have to basically discriminate them because of certain disabilities that are there. So that is again from the perspective of social model. Within the social model, we have the human rights model. Remember that human right model comes under the social model. It is an evolution of the social model, emphasizes that individual with disability should enjoy human rights equally. Now, something that is expected or is an inherent right of a human being with respect to the human rights. So overall, if you see, it is a part of the social model only. In the examination, if you're writing this also, if these two models are written, it is good enough. What we understood from here, medical model is you're focusing on an individual aspect or individual aspect or individual person who is suffering from any form of disability. That is medical model. Social model is that a person is also a member of the society. He or she should be getting the equal rights as the other members of the society. Now, that is the model with respect to the rights we have studied. Now, let's see the challenges. Challenges faced by person with disabilities in India. Now, there are various challenges that they come across. Let's see that. First, inaccessible infrastructure. Now, do you realize, though we have Accessible India campaign programs always there, but you realize that not every transport vehicle or public building is still accessible to the people with disabilities. Now, if they want to, let us say, move through public spaces, transport, or even many elevators and ramps are not fit for the people who are suffering from disability. So that is again, that basically restricts their movement from one place to another. Even if you go to malls, if you'll be realizing that there's a possibility that if you want to go to the upper floors, okay, lifts might be there. Lifts and escalators are there. Sometimes the lifts are not working on the escalators are the only option where the people with disability do find a lot of problem. Now, if you go to the public buildings, you have the issue further aggravated. Many times the lifts are not working and only alternative is the stairs that are there. And one has to go to the upper floors, then it becomes really challenging for the people with disabilities. Next is, according to 2018 report by the Department of Empowerment with a person with disabilities, only 3% of the buildings in India were found to be fully accessible to the people who are suffering from disabilities. They can easily access that. The architectural apartheid. Now, this is very important word. Architectural apartheid. When you talk about apartheid, please remember it was a concept based on the racial discrimination that was in South Africa. Now, this is a discrimination that the people with disabilities are facing because of the architectural ways in which buildings have been designed, which are exclusionary in nature, that are excluding certain sections, which like the person with disabilities. So that is again known as architectural apartheid in this particular case. First is the inaccessible infrastructure. Next, educational exclusion. Now, see, despite the Right to Education Act that has been implemented, that basically provides or aims at quality education, right? Now, there are a lot of barriers. Lack of exclusive school, trained teachers, assistive technologies creates a knowledge gap. Approximately 45% of the disabled people are illiterate in India. And only 62.9% of the disabled people between age 3 to 35 have ever attended school. It doesn't mean they've completed their schooling, but ever attended regular school. This is again a problem which you will be realizing if they have not been attending school or 45% are illiterate, possibility is that they will not be able to get jobs also in the future. Leave around graduation, post-graduation, professional degrees. If they are suffering from this particular scenario, they are going to face a lot of issues. So that is what is the point of concern which we are talking about, right? Okay. So next issue, third, the glass ceiling of prejudice. Now see, they are the ones who face a lot of discrimination also because of the particular disability that they're facing. It might be mobility. Let us say a person who's not able to walk properly because there's a certain problem with his one or the other leg. People will be passing remarks, prejudice because of the way a person is walking. That is a very minuscule way of prejudice or discrimination. Look at the level or which it aggravates as the disability further aggravates. People don't even want to talk to them. It very often happens. This is what we face or come across in our society. If you see PW physics, person with disabilities face significant challenges in the meaningful employment. How? Workplace discrimination, lack of reasonable accommodations. This is basically creates a glass ceiling. Glass ceiling over here, please remember. In a way, you know certain infrastructure is visible, but it is not accessible. That is why that glass is there, something that can be accessed, but you're not able to access. That is why this glass ceiling word comes, right? For example, you know you have to go to a, let us say, a government office, right? That is in front of you, and the floor is in the 6th floor you have to visit. That office is in front of you. You have to go there, you know that, but you cannot go there because of the infrastructural issue. The lift is not there, and you cannot walk up the stairs. That means a glass ceiling is there, which is visible that you have to go there, but you cannot reach there. That is basically the aspect of glass ceiling that we talk about over here with respect to the person with disabilities. Now, India has almost 3 crore people with disabilities, which is around 1.9 crore is employable, but only 34 lakh of them are being employed. Now, just imagine. Out of these 3 crore people who are suffering from disabilities, only 34 lakh are actually employed. Now, this is a aggravating situation when we talk with respect to the problems that the person with disabilities are facing. Let's move ahead. Fourth, healthcare hurdles. Accessible approximately, see, this healthcare again, we realize that a lot of problems happen because firstly, only 34 lakhs are employed. That also doesn't mean in very good position or getting good packages also. Second is that most of them, let us say large number of them are illiterate. Automatically, the amount of money that they're going to have is also going to be less. So when the healthcare problems happen, the out-of-pocket expenditure is so high that they're not able to meet the expenses. And many of them, if you see or study, the insurance penetration as it is in India is very low. Most of them have not insured, have not taken the healthcare insurance. So whatever any health problems arises, it basically leads to a lot of crisis in the families. That is why we say many healthcare facilities lack disability-friendly equipment or trained staff to handle the specific needs. Similarly, even during the COVID-19 pandemic, further exposed the vulnerability the person with disabilities who are basically facing or coming across. Because at that time, people getting, let us say, crisis was such that ambulances, in a way, you'll be realizing, had to pick up them, take them to hospitals. In many hospitals, we did not have any special facilities at that time for the person with disabilities. Then even if you see the wheelchairs that have to be present, they were in second grade condition, not even, you cannot even make the patient sit on them. All these things were exposed during this time, which basically told the people that if normal people are facing such issues, what about the people with person with disabilities? So these are certain problems that we come across. Next, if we go, fifth, digital divide, new frontier of exclusion. Now, please understand. Firstly, if you're talking about large number of persons with disabilities are illiterate, they might not be able to access the digital technology also. Digital illiteracy as it is very high in India, because in India right now only 32% are digitally literate. Others are digitally illiterate. So people with a person with disabilities, obviously let us say, they lack the limbs. So we do not have right now such mechanisms or ways through which basically they can access the digital technology. That is again a problematic situation. Websites, app, digital service often lack features like screen reader or closed captions. These are lacking. As per the 2020 report, by 2020 Web Accessibility Annual Report, we say that 98% of the websites fail to comply with the accessibility requirements for the person with disability. So automatically, if 98% websites are lacking, you can just yourself believe that automatically the people with disabilities are going to suffer because they cannot access it or understand it, or possibly they're not able to get what the content basically they need at that particular moment. So as we move ahead, sixth, legal and policy implementation gap. Now see, there was a research paper tiger syndrome. Now this basically talks about a lot of problems with respect to the person with disabilities. Let's see. While India's progressive laws like the right of person with disabilities, implementation remains a major challenge. Many provisions remain on paper, creating a paper tiger syndrome. What is paper tiger syndrome? That things have been provided on paper, that this has to be done, this will be done, this will be done, this will be provided, but they're only on paper, not on the ground reality. That is why this is known as paper tiger syndrome. See, for instance, a 2019 report says that the Department of Empowerment of the Person with Disabilities revealed that only 23 out of 23 out of the 35 states or union territories have constituted the State Advisory Board on Disability. Though it is mandated by the Act of 2016, only 23 have basically implemented. Now, if you move ahead, this implementation gap undermines the potential impact that the people with disabilities will be suffering to the extent that they are suffering. So this is again a basic representation. Now, what are the laws that are there? See, Persons with Disabilities Act 2016 is again a comprehensive law, which again we have seen that includes 21 types of disabilities, which basically provides them an equitable platform, then gives them rights equally as the other citizens, prevents discrimination, provides penal provisions if any discrimination is done. So it is basically a revamp of the Act of 1995. It ensures equal opportunities, protection of the rights, and participation of the person with disabilities. This is one. Second is National Trust Act 1999. This is basically provides for a constitution of a body at the national level for the welfare of the persons with autism, cerebral palsy, mental retardation, and multiple disabilities. Again, this was an act that was present earlier also. Rehabilitation Council of India Act 1992. This act regulates training, registration of the professionals working in the field of disability rehabilitation. Then we have the Mental Health Care Act of 2017. This act protects the rights and dignity of the persons with mental illness. So these provisions are there. And we see the challenges also there. What we need as right now is two major things. First is the proper implementation of the act. Like 23 states out of the 35 states or union territories have basically constituted that advisory board. Now, see, this is the onus of the states and also the central government to see that the states basically perform their duties that are entrusted to them by the act. Along with it, we need to have change in the mindset in particular. See, the problem is not only about the infrastructure, it is there. That is with time going to improve also, we are assured of that, because government is working on that. Accessible India program and all, it is there. But again, we need to speed up that process. But major thing is that the discrimination that they come across from the people is what the major problem is. That people treat them as again second-grade citizens, do not want to sit with them possibly, do not want to talk to them. They're the ones who are as humane as us. That is what is the mindset that needs to change, and that needs to be nurtured right from the childhood. When you are in school also, you should be taught for that. So this is again a very, very important dimension that needs to be ingrained. That will provide a huge change in the society in the future. Next. When we talk about what are the major initiatives for the empowerment of persons with disabilities, there are others. PM Daksh, Divyang Skill Development and Rehabilitation Scheme. Then we have Accessible India Campaign, Deen Dayal Disabled Rehabilitation Scheme, assistance to disabled persons for the purchase, fitting of aids and appliances, National Fellowship for Students with Disabilities. Now, these are the schemes that have been basically provided to the persons with disabilities in order to empower them. Next, global push for cooperation as space traffic crowds the Earth orbit, topic number 2. Now, please understand, when we are talking about this particular topic, this basically talks about a lot of satellites being there later on, which become defunct because a life cycle of a satellite is a limited period, which might be 5 years, 10 years, not more than that. After that, what we realize that it becomes a junk in the space, and that tends to create a lot of problem. That is why the major topic of concern over here is the space debris. And what space debris is, we'll be seeing that, and the dimensions associated with that. Now let's see that. What is space debris? Now see, in simple words, if I want to talk about space debris, it is basically space junk or trash. As I mentioned about the satellites, you'll be realizing that after its life cycle, it is just a junk in the space. Now, due to various dimensions, those satellites might break. Those small particles can be very lethal when the other missions are basically going to space. Now, just imagine this small piece of iron that is moving at thousands of kilometers per hour, and you have your own new satellite or being there, or space station being there, and that is hit by that. Automatically, it is going to blast that. So what basically happens is this space debris is basically not only a space pollution, but also going to hinder the future space missions. That is why we say a lot of traffic or crowdness with respect to the space is being perceived over here. Now let's see this. It is also known as space junk, which is any piece of machinery or debris that is left in the space by humans. It can refer to larger objects like dead satellites, smaller items such as debris of the paint flakes fallen off the rocket. Obviously, if the rockets are going, you'll be realizing there are the paint that is applied on the rocket is a very special paint. And the flakes can come out. Those are very lethal itself because they are very thick, because it has to protect the rocket also. Now, the peeling of that rocket paint also that takes place in the space is also a debris. Again, a waste. Now, majority of the space debris consists of the rocket launching material and the decommissioned satellites. Decommissioned, that is now not in work. We are not using them. Majority of the debris in the low Earth orbits within the 2000 kilometers of the Earth's surface, though some are geostationary, which are 35,786 kilometers above the equator, right? So we see this is basically the space debris. That is the space junk that is present in the space. Now, current status of the debris. Space debris, as per the ESA, European Space Agency's Space Environment Report 2022, over 30,000 pieces of space debris have been recorded, are being tracked on a regular basis by the Space Surveillance Network. Why do you want to track, or why should you track? Because remember, tracking it is equally important, because if you do not track that and you're launching a mission, and later on you realize that that debris basically hits your any space mission that you're launching on a satellite, it is a waste of money. It is all going to get destroyed. That is why it is very important. Micro debris. Now, the problem that arises is that ones which are very small in size. Approximately, we see 22 lakh pieces of ranging in the size of 1 to 10 centimeters, with millions more even smaller than 1 centimeter is again a major problem. In addition to this, there are about 34,000 objects greater than 10 centimeter. Growth of satellites constellations, we approximately 6,718 active satellites orbiting the Earth in 2022, an increase in nearly 2,000 satellites by just 1 year. Now you realize that if you see it in 2022, it is basically 6,718. 1 year before that, it was 4,700 something. So the rate at which a satellite's launch is taking place, we'll be realizing you'll be having more debris over there, because after some time they're going to be decommissioned. So this rate of increase in debris is basically and at a very exponential rate. That is going to hurt the future generations as well through the means of any future launch that takes place. So this is the current status. If we talk about now, what are the causes of the space debris? Let us say first is launching objects into the space. You're launching a lot of objects, let us say in the form of satellites, rockets and all. It will in a way lead to a space debris also. For instance, Starlink internet satellites from SpaceX now account for half of the active satellites in the Earth orbit. Further, nearly 12,000 satellites are planned to be deployed in future coming, and which might extend to thousands more. Next is abandoned satellites. Now, the ones which are decommissioned or which are not of use are basically those satellites which are like junk in the space. And again, they are breaking due to various physical and, let us say, thermal shocks that the satellites in future might experience. They will break into small flakes also. That again creates a further debris in the space. Now, third, anti-satellite test. Now, several countries like India, US, China are basically conducted anti-satellite tests, which are basically aimed at launching a missile or destroying a particular satellite. Now, destruction of those satellites again leads to a lot of space debris. See, from the aspect of protection of their national interest, it is fine. You should need to be protected from these having this technology, but testing these on a repeated basis also tends to increase the space debris to a great extent. So this has led to deliberate space debris creation. For instance, in 2007, Chinese Feng Yun 1C mission alone increased the population of the trackable space objects by 25%. Next is fourth, increasing expansion. The space industry is booming. Earlier, what used to happen, it was the public sector of the various countries, whether it was from India or whether other European agencies, where there we realized that major stakeholding was from the side of the government, right? But in the future, what we realize now, private sector is very actively playing role in the space industry, particularly space tourism, launching vehicles, rockets. So once that happens, what has going to happen? The launches with respect to the space missions are going to increase at a very exponential rate. And once that happens, it will be directly proportional to the increase in the space debris. That is what is basically happening. Fifth, long-lasting mission debris. Space debris caused by the satellites in the lower Earth orbits might return to the atmosphere of the Earth, and however, debris in the higher altitudes in the geostationary orbits can orbit the Earth for a very longer time, right? Next is fragmentation of the space debris. Any particular object with further fragments, and again, increasing the spread of the space debris is again one of the reasons. Threats and challenges. Now, what are the threats and the challenges? We have seen the aspects of how it might have been, what are the causes of the space debris. Now, let us see the threats and challenges. First, satellite endangerment. What does the satellite endangerment means? Because see, already the new satellites are being launched and you have the debris over there. Those small debris, that is micro debris also, which basically can attack or let us say hit the satellites that are there, and it can destroy the functioning, and millions of dollars are spent by various space agencies for that. It becomes a complete waste. Next is Kessler's syndrome. What is this? Growth in the space debris increases the risk of the collision between space objects, that we've already done. Now, if you see third, limitation of the future space activities. See, if you have such large number of debris, and we know that every year thousands and thousands of satellites are being launched, after few years you'll be realizing there will be a constraint with respect to who can launch the satellites also, because already the space would be full of the various satellites which are actually active and large number which have been decommissioned, and the space debris that is there. But again, there are limitations with respect to the satellites also, which are going to occupy the space. That is what happens is that it will basically hinder the future missions that are going to be launched. Next, vulnerability, space station vulnerability. See, India is also planning its own space station in the future. We already had NASA's International Space Station. Now, you will be realizing that those space stations are very large in size. And once they are large in size, there's a greater probability of them being hit by any space debris. And that is why what is critical is that how to remove these space debris becomes important, because otherwise, if you're spending millions and not billions of dollars in those construction of those international space stations, if they are hit by these debris, it is again going to be a huge waste of resources and money. Then space pollution. Automatically we realize that a lot of debris is there. It is a means of a pollution in the space. Right now, various implications are being observed over there. But again, yes, a major problem. Next, tension between countries. Now you realize that now in the space debris is moving in the space. Now, supposingly the let us say testing is being done by India with respect to anti-satellite testing rockets, but you realize that some of the debris in the space went towards the Chinese side also. Similarly, one country is launching satellites and let us say testing satellites or destroying satellites to various missiles, and the debris is on the side of some other country in the space. Now that later on will hinder the aspects of the space launch of that particular country. That is why we say that it might be a cause of tension between the various countries also, because again, space is also limited. It is not infinite with respect to what surrounds India and the world. Then space debris removal, international initiatives, Clean Space Initiative. Now, this was launched in 2012 by the European Space Agency that aims to ensure the sustainability of the space environment. That is why Clear Space One, the first mission to remove the pieces of space debris, will be launched in 2026. So that in order to you can remove one or the other way the space debris that is present there. Next is Liability Convention of 1972, Convention on the International Liability for Damage Caused by the Space Objects. It was adopted in 1972. It basically states that launching state is absolutely liable to pay compensation for the damage caused by the space objects on the Earth's surface or the aircraft, as well as the damage caused by the faults in the space. Now, this convention basically says that, let us say, some object of one country is hit by the debris that was caused by some other country, then the countries because of which the debris has been caused will be liable to pay to the country who has basically suffered the damages. So this is again a convention. Remove debris. It aims to conduct active debris removal technologies, demonstration in order to determine the best way to capture the debris and remove it, right? Outer Space Treaty on the principles of governing the activities of states in the exploration and use of outer space, including moon and other bodies, which are again talking with respect to space management, where the space debris aspect also becomes important. Now, these are certain initiatives which are again important, right? When we talk about with respect to India, ISRO System for Safe and Sustainable Operation Management, IS-40M, launched in 2022, ISRO's holistic approach to ensuring safety of the space assets and continued use of the outer space for the development. It monitors the objects that pose collision threats. Next, Project Netra, Network for Space Object Tracking Analysis. It is basically an early warning system launched by ISRO in the space to detect any debris and the other threats to the Indian satellites. 3. Collision avoidance maneuvers. In order to avoid collisions with the space objects, ISRO performs 21 collision avoidance maneuvers in India operational assets since 2022. So again, operational maneuvers, that means you're training or trying in ways best through which any collision can be avoided in the space if the possibility of the situation that arises. Next is ISRO SSA Space Situational Awareness Control Center. It is basically established in 2022, which is a hub for space situational awareness, where you're focusing on any sort of problem that arises. You're aware of that even before that. That is basically focusing on the information dissemination. Now, this is the major dimensions. Now, as we move ahead, One Nation, One Subscription Plan, topic number 3. We've already done this earlier also. Over here, we are basically going to see the dimensions. See, when I talk about One Nation, One Subscription, we very well know that, as we had discussed earlier also, the journals or the scientific journals we talk about are very, very expensive with respect to if you subscribe them. In India, when we buy magazines, because India is a developing country, you realize that magazines also are cheaply available. Now they've also become expensive. But if you talk about scientific journals, if you take the subscription, they might even cost you thousands of dollars. And for an individual to buy that, in India specifically and other developing nations or lesser developing nation, it is very difficult. Because most of the journals that are basically published, a large number of them are from United States or the European countries. So what government of India is doing is that it is making the journals available for the scientific research. Now let's see what is basically being done over here. It is a unified portal. It is a unified portal for accessing journals. Applies to government higher educational institutions, HEIs, and central R&D laboratories. The scheme is seen by the Ministry of Education through the Department of Higher Education. It coordinated by Information and Library Network, InflipNet, an autonomous inter-university center under the University Grants Commission. That is first thing, that for accessing journals for the higher educational institutions and obviously the central R&D laboratories under the Ministry of Education. Now, if you move ahead, target beneficiaries covers 6,300 institutions, including central and state government higher education institutions. Remember, state and central government higher education institutions and central R&D institutions. Benefit, it will benefit close to 1.8 crore students, faculty and researchers across the disciplines. Objective and benefits, promotes research and development, complements the Anusandhan National Research Foundation initiative, aims to provide nationwide access to the scholarly journals. Now, please remember, when the faculties or let us say the students have to do the research, very often they have to refer to the various journals that have been created, either in order to enhance or add on to the particular research that has been done, or if you want to do a new research also, in that particular case also, you might need the journals. But lack of availability of this journal and being very expensive tends to hinder the prospects of any further research also that takes place. Now that is why that creates a disparity with respect to those who can access and those who cannot. That is why this is basically going to promote the research and development with respect to India. Process of ONOS, that is One Nation, One Subscription. Access to journal will be provided through a national subscription. It is coordinated by the Information and Library Network, as we said, an autonomous inter-university center for the UGC. Through that, you can basically access. Budget allocation, total budget is 6,000 crore for 3 years from 2025 to 27, classified as a central sector scheme. Please understand there are two types of scheme under this umbrella. One is central sector scheme and one is centrally sponsored scheme. Centrally sponsored schemes means that under a particular scheme, the central government and the state government both are basically putting in the amount of money based on the percentage that has been decided, right? So both are contributing in a way. Under the central sector scheme, it is solely funded by the central government. The state is not funding anything or making any contribution. This is solely by the central government. That is why central sector scheme. Let's move ahead. Need. What was the need? One nation, one subscription addresses the critical requirements of India's research and higher education. Elimination of resource duplication, prevents overlapping journal subscription across multiple libraries, reduce unnecessary expenditure on the subscription because you have one source through which you can basically access. Enhanced bargaining power, a centralized subscription system strengthens the negotiation with the publisher because the central government itself is basically bargaining for that. Access to the scholarly resources that basically will be accessible to more than 1.8 crore people, and again boosting the research and development environment in India. Prelims topics. Topic 4, factory activity expansion slips to the 11-month low. Where here we are basically going to talk about PMI. Now see, Purchasing Managers Index. Now this is again very important. We have seen other indexes also. This is also very important. And what is PMI? See, Purchasing Managers Index basically measures the month-over-month changes in the economic activities, right, within the manufacturing sector. That means focus is on the manufacturing sector. That again, once you are able to talk about and understand the manufacturing sector, you're able to talk about the trends of the economy that is going on, the demand, the employment dimensions also closely related to that. That is why Purchasing Managers Index measures the month-on-month change in the economic activity that is taking place in the manufacturing sector. Now, please understand, it does not mean that it is simply talking about manufacture, means that it is not going to talk service sector also. Manufacturing over here in this umbrella will include manufacturing and service also when we talk about the PMI. Now, how? Let's see. Indicator of the business activity both in the manufacturing and the service sector. Now see, why the service has also been added over here. Please understand, when you are manufacturing something, today's time is not confined merely to some product being manufactured. It is also the post-that services that are provided. So that is why manufacturing and service are also intricately linked in today's time. So that is why it is an indicator of the business activity in the manufacturing and the service sector. Overall, the umbrella term, you're talking about the manufacturing. It summarizes whether the market conditions are viewed when the purchasing managers are expanded, neutral, or manufacturing. Now, this is basically when you talk about or study the index over here, you basically get to know about what the status is. Through the status, you tend to know about the market perception. And through the market perception, you get to know that what the economic activities and how the economic activities are going on. That is why this is very important. Firstly, it is basically measures the month-on-month change in the economic activity from the manufacturing sector activity. Please understand, including the manufacturing plus the service sector aspects also. Over here, let's see this. Calculation. The Purchasing Managers Index is derived by fact-based quotient of a large number of companies of the concerned sector. Now, 5 indicators under the Purchasing Manager Index are new orders, inventory levels in the companies, production that is taking place, supplier deliveries, employment environment. Now, these 5 basically help in getting to know about the data and then basically using that for getting the PMI. Now, for manufacturing PMI, the questions is sent to the manufacturing companies and questions related to the key variables which we have seen. Now see, the variables with the weight in the index are orders 30%, output 25%, employment 20%, suppliers delivery items 15%, stock items 10%. So this is the weightage that is there. Now do you realize when I talk about employment, delivery time, over there services and delivery dimensions as logistics come. That is why these are services also. That is why we realize that services cannot be segregated in this case also. So this is the weight that is given, and based on that we get to know what are the stocks. Again, see, output will increase if the demand is there. Orders will increase if the demand is there. Employment will also increase if the demand is there. We realize that delivery time, that works on the logistics and the service delivery system. Stock in the items, you will be realizing that with time, automatically, if the production increases, you will have to stock it. And then slowly as the demand goes, the stock will decrease also, because we realize that demand is more. So this basically tells you about the demand in the market also. So PMI is very important ingredient towards getting to know about the market situation. Now, the survey are conducted on the monthly basis. Now, does not mean you're going to every shop and every company. Large number of companies are taken as indicators through which you basically try to derive this particular statistic. Next, types of purchasing managers index. There are two types: manufacturing PMI and services PMI. Those are calculated separately for the manufacturing and the service sectors, and then a composite index is constructed, as we had talked about. Headline PMI. Headline PMI is a number from 0 to 100. PMI above 50 represents an expansion as compared to the previous month. If a PMI value is 50, because based on the survey that is carried out and the data we have, a composite index is created. In that particular index, if the PMI value represents 50, represents above 50, that means the expansion is taking place. PMI under 50 represents a contraction. And then we represents a reading of 50 indicates no change with respect to the previous month, because it is a month-on-month analysis that is done. Differences from the IIP, that is Index of Industrial Production. How it is different? See, it is different from the Index of Industrial Production, which gauges the level of activity of the economy. IIP covers broader industrial sector compared to the PMI. However, PMI is more dynamic as compared to the standard IIP. So it is more dynamic in nature. That is what the basic advantage of the PMI is basically with respect to IIP. Significance. Usually PMI is released before the other indexes such as GDP, industrial output. PMI gives an idea about the direction in which the economy is going. As you also saw that the weightages to output, demand, orders and all that is there. So it basically reflects what the situation of the market basically is. Now, the manufacturing and the suppliers use the index to decide their production needs and based on the new orders. And obviously this index also helps the investors in which company they want to invest and where the investment should take place. So again, a very important indicator with respect to the market situation. Topic 5, government scraps the windfall tax on domestic crude and export of fuel. Now, this is very, very important. Please see, when we talk about windfall tax, what is windfall tax? See, when any company experiences a very large profits, in order to basically counter that measure, governments very often tend to impose some windfall taxes on the companies who are unexpectedly or dramatically gaining large amount of money due to the profits. So that means government also wants a share out of that. So that is why we say the windfall tax is a type of tax which is levied on companies or individuals who have unexpectedly or dramatically gained large profits, often due to external factors beyond their control. Now, let us assume that over here, any oil company, because of, let us say, they have a large store of, let us say, oil reserve. And they have bought oils at a very cheap price, and large amount of oil reserves have been stored in their reserves, right? And next month, we realize that the price of the oil becomes 3 times what the price at which they had bought. Automatically, the profit will also zoom 3 times. Then let us say, government can basically impose certain amount of tax because to negate the large amount of profit due to the external situation that has arisen. That is one of the cases, right? So if companies gain large amount or drastic situation, or let us say profit is being made by them due to certain external factors, then a tax that can be imposed on them to counter that, that is known as windfall tax. Now, it is commonly levied on industries such as oil, gas and mining, because these are more susceptible to the large profits that can be made because of price fluctuation. The purpose is to capture the portion of the extraordinary profit of the companies and redistribute for the public good. That means you capture the excess profit and then use it for the public good from the side of the government. It is strategic measure to promote transparency and fairness and responsible economic practices in the energy sector industries, particularly as we said in the oil, gas and mining. This is very often practiced. That is why we realize that government had already imposed windfall tax on domestic crude oil production and export of fuel. Now that has been basically scrapped. Now see, having understood windfall tax, What are the advantages of the windfall tax? First, increase government revenue and expenditure, because if the company is making a huge profit, that means what will happen? The government, let us say on a oil companies, you impose a windfall tax because of the profit they are making. The government will also get a good amount of revenue. So that means to increase the government revenue, this can be done. Second, ensure sustainable economic growth. Automatically, windfall tax help the government capture the excessive profits and distribute them fairly within the society. Distribution doesn't mean you're giving everybody money in their account. It basically means through infrastructure, through public facilities, through welfare state, through schemes, you're basically giving it indirectly to the people also. That means which is going to, because that's public expenditure would be made, that will basically lead to a sustainable economic growth also. That is assumed. Again, please remember that these all are subject to criticisms, but over here we realize that these are the advantages which the governments perceive when they basically impose a windfall tax. 3. Stabilize prices. Proponents believe that windfall taxes help in regulation and stabilizing on the prices. If any particular company is making a lot of profits, there's a possibility a liquidity will increase and price fluctuation can take place. In order to counter that, the tax of windfall tax is basically imposed on those companies. So these are the advantages where the government perceives the reasons why windfall tax should be imposed. Now, there are a lot of disadvantages. Reduces the business profit. Now, what is the purpose of business? The businessman does business in order to increase the profit. They want to profit and gain money out of that. Once you are basically imposing such taxes that basically reduces the profit for the business, then again what happens, that creates a unfriendly situation from the aspects of economy. That is why first, reducing business profit. Next, discourages innovation, because people know if you do some innovation and you get profit out of it, then government, if imposes a windfall tax because of the profit you are making, that will discourage the innovation the companies are making. They might go to another countries and do and work there, move their base from India or let us say to other countries. Next, causes uncertainty in the market. Market is again, market conditions are based on perception. If the perception is that government can impose on windfall taxes, automatically the markets will go down. Because this is again seen from the perspective that it is an unnecessary intervention from the side of the government, which is basically curbing the profits of the companies who are basically making money. And that is why we realize that it increases the market uncertainty, and even market to a certain extent might go down a crash for a day or two also when such taxes are imposed. Next, increase the cost for the consumers. Businesses may pass the burden on the windfall tax to the consumers. Let us say an oil company is making a profit and you see that windfall tax is imposed on them by the government. Now the profit of the company is decreasing because of the windfall tax. They might increase the rate of the petrol or diesel. Yes, they will, because in order to counter that, they also want to increase their revenue. So they will definitely do that. So then the consumers are the ones who are basically suffering. Reduces employment. Automatically, if the profits are going to decrease, people will employ lesser number of people. The companies will employ lesser number of people. It will reduce the employment also. Next, difficulty in calculating excessive profit. Now, this is very, very interesting topic. That what do you mean by calculating excessive profit? What is excess profit? How do you delineate that this profit is not excess, this is excess? This itself is a very jargon type of a word. That is why people tend to say, how did you say that this is excess profit? Tomorrow a person is earning 1 crore rupees as a, let us say, income, and out of that he is earning a profit of, let us say, 10 lakh rupees. Tomorrow, let us say after 3 years, the person is earning, let us say, 10 crores and earning a profit of 1 crore. So is it excess, or whether 50 lakh was excess? That is why this word itself is very subjective in nature and on the whims and fancies of the respective governments. Now, this was the windfall tax. Next, topic 6, new crimes and the oil tools. Please remember, this is basically talking about the DGP IG conference that took place. It was attended by the Honorable Home Minister and by the Honorable Prime Minister. And we need to see the 59th annual in All India Conference of Director General and Inspector General of Police. The 3-day conference from 29th to the 1st December was held in a hybrid format in Bhubaneswar, Odisha. Now, the conference was attended by the Union Home Minister, Principal Secretaries, National Security Advisors, Union Home Minister, and the Honorable Prime Minister attended that. And DGPs from all states and union territories headed by the heads of CAPF participated physically, while over 750 officers from various ranks joined in the hybrid format. That means the DGPs and the IGs were present there, but other, let us say, other senior officials were basically joined through a virtual format so that they could listen to what the discussions are going on over there. Now, the conference was a culmination led to a comprehensive discussion on various issues. Now, please understand, it was hosted by the Intelligence Bureau, IB. This is very important. Now, IB is under the Home Ministry, and we need to very well understand that this should be understood well that it was hosted by the Intelligence Bureau, right? Next, outcomes. The best practices from the state and the union territories were presented in the conference so that state can learn from each other. This is very important. Learning from each other. Next, in-depth discussions were held on the existing and the emerging challenges to the national security, including counter-terrorism, left-wing extremism, cybercrime, economic security, immigration, coastal security, and the narco traffic. So this is something that you should all be knowing. This is something that you should all be knowing. Deliberations were again held on the emerging topics like border issues related to Bangladesh and Myanmar, because again, issues in Bangladesh are further escalating. We see radicalism rise in Bangladesh also, that might have implications for the security concerns in India also. Along with its insurgent groups again in Myanmar are rising, which is again creating an issue for India. So we are basically talking about discussions on those topics that take place. Further, a review was undertaken for the implementation of newly enacted laws, criminal laws. We saw the discussion with respect to new laws that have come, Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita and all. They were discussed, what are the implications and outcome and the results out of that also. And initiatives and the best practices were discussed. Now, please understand, this was the outcome, but when we talk about the aspect that Prime Minister visiting there also talked about various important discussions which become important for this particular Inspector General and DGP conference. What did the Prime Minister say? Address that deep fake and the digital threats. Now, Honorable Prime Minister very categorically said that the issue with respect to artificial intelligence is on rise. Deep fake, what does it deep fake mean? Deep fake are such artificial intelligence technologies through which you can morph the image or the photos of one person over the another. For example, if a particular person is there, you take artificial intelligence will recognize my face and put it on the face of the other person, and the video that is created by artificial intelligence software, it is very difficult to differentiate whether it is fake or real. That is why it is very, very dangerous in today's time. So these are the threats against cyber crimes related issues have been coming up. So that is why we realize that these problems are on a rise. Next, the Prime Minister mentioned about enhanced police engagement in the border areas. So police personnel in the border regions were instructed to spend nights with village and the senior officials so that there is a more people to police contact should be increased. Policing does not mean, police basically means a way through which you build the trust in the public. And that is why over here, enhancement of the police and the people, particularly in the rural region also, a relation should be developed. That is what the Prime Minister focused on. Then 3 is utilizing technology for policing, using the best of the technologies, best of the dimensions. Even today's you see use of drones, use of robots are being done by the police. Now where those technologies can be used, that is good enough because that reduces the possible casualties that might happen. So again, a very important aspect, particularly in the case of the cybercrime. Now again, combating cyber fraud and crime, we realize that India reportedly lost close to 11,333 crore to cybercrime until September 2024. This is going to rise exponentially with time. So that is why we say over here the need is to basically work on cybersecurity experts, having those experts which can counter the problems that are arising and to counter the threats, because that is very critical. You need an expert force for this. Now, 5th, urban policing and emerging security concerns. Now, please understand, Prime Minister Modi scaling successful urban policies initiatives like smart policing initiatives, where again technology is there, adaptability, strategically reliable, transparent mechanisms are there through which you can basically have a very friendly as well as a policing force that we have like in London, where people are not afraid of going to police station, but because as the urban areas are more susceptible to various newer crimes that come up. So the policemen also need to be trained in proper way because of the multidimensionality of the issue that come across. Along with it, the large number of situations that people might come across or the people might come across. So police should be very capable of resolving that. That is why we say that urban policing is again a very, very important dimension. Sixth, commemoration of the Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. We realize that commemoration of the 150th anniversary of Sardar Patel was again talked about and its contribution with respect to unity and integrity of India. Next, multiple choice questions. Question number 1. Please see our question with the options. Answer is B with an explanation. First is B. Question number 2 with options. Answer is A with explanation. Question 3. Answer is A with explanation. Question 4 with options. Answer is D. Question 5. These are the statements. These are the point options. The answer is B. This was the analysis of the Hindu from today's newspaper. Hope you liked it, enjoyed it, and learned from it. We'll be continuing with the session. Take care and Jai Hind.